This is request 93, request received for continued monitoring of the complex. However, as I stated previously, we're not going to do any deep diving. 01's power recharge and system updates are sitting at around the 48% mark, and there's not much I can do about it. I told you guys I don't have any functioning cameras. The building itself is well below crush depth, and the slightest crack is enough to send a jet of water through the air that can shave steel. That aside, the cameras inside are dead. I've lost all contact. Call it fatigue, I guess. They've been down there for, God, how many decades? Anywho, I did some digging, and you'll be pleased to know I still have one sonar box directly across from the main entrance. I'll extrapolate it into a wireframe for you to look at when I package this message, but that's really the best I can do. So, sending a ping now. And another. And one more. I'll pull one up. There we go. It looks like it always does. It's still sleeping, which I guess means Rob is doing a good job, and the world keeps spinning. Repairs and updates are still going slow but steady. Continue your transmissions as scheduled. I'm holding up things on my end. T out.
Hello and welcome to another edition of D&D Stories. I am your host Rob from the channel Performance Check, and this is the show where I regale you with tales of old that are told from the hit role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons, and sometimes Pathfinder. So, today is going to be a pretty exciting one. I'm very pleased to say that within the dynamic that was my gaming group, the time had come for the switcheroo to commence once again. The tables were turned, and I found myself once again crowned as the almighty Dungeon Master. This is the start of a new campaign and a new story. This is the story of Star Thief. Our story begins with Thade Rex of Hemlon, the human ranger who was exiled from his home long ago. But now Thade Rex has found himself in a strange position. As you may remember, if you've been watching this particular season of D&D Stories from back to front, you'll remember that Thade Rex essentially had become steward within the city of Adgerstel, the capital of Ireland, to the south. And while Thade Rex had made some good decisions in terms of governance and leadership, his old habits were beginning to creep back into the forefront. Essentially, Thade Rex was drinking more and more, and his judgment was beginning to become more impaired. He would throw lavish feasts, and he would send money to the champion's purse of anyone who would win in the fighting tournaments that were held in the lower end of the city. And it soon became clear to those who helped govern Adgerstel, lords and nobles and the like, that essentially Thade Rex might be using his power slightly irresponsibly. Not in a horrible way, like he's not executing people, he's not taxing people any more than he should be, but he is using his position to have a good time. And it's one day that we see Thade Rex sat upon the throne of Adgerstel, which he has decided to make his own seat of governance. Early on within his reign as a steward, he had been told that, like Denethor in Lord of the Rings, you may remember, Denethor's seat at the bottom of Lord of the Rings, at the bottom of the stairs of the Gondorian throne, his chair isn't the throne. He's not allowed to sit on the throne. It's the same with Thade Rex. Thade Rex isn't allowed to sit on the throne of Agistel, but he does. And people are like, once there was this ranger who seemed to be holding stewardship over these lands until there was someone better came along. And now it seems like he's actually settling in for the long run. Thade Rex is settling in to rule Agistel for the rest of his life. And so, after a council of many voices, the Council of Many Voices, it is advised that Thade Rex takes a sabbatical. By which I mean, he has thrown his possessions and they say, come back in a year or so. We're just going to see how things work out here. And Thade Rex is like, well, no, I'm quite comfortable here. And I'm also waiting for my friends to return. They have been a very long time. Again, if you have been watching this season of D&D stories, you will remember that Valdane and Roscor went to fight across the sea in a land known as Lockthorn, where we know where that horrible, horrible campaign, how that transpired. But Thade Rex is waiting, and it has been a year. Valdane and Roscor have been gone for a year, and he hasn't heard anything from them. And this is sort of how I'm setting up the story from Matt's perspective. Matt has just handed back the crown of the DM, so I'm sort of letting him know what's been going on with Thade Rex in that time. And dissent is rife amongst Agistel, so they kick him out, basically. And there is a skip. There is a time jump, as it were, where we see Thade Rex moving through the mountains. He is headed northeast at this point, to the very centre of the landmass known as Main Realm. To the very centre realm, as a matter of fact, the very centre province, which is known as Eldarium, the capital of Main Realm. It has sweeping green dales and lush forests, tranquil lakes and fast-flowing rivers. To the very west of its borders lies a colossal mountain range known as the Endless Rocken. This mountain range stretches from the very south of the centre of Main Realm to the very northern point. It is a mountain range that essentially divides the land in half. Legends have it that this mountain range was once a colossal creature, the length of a continent, that had been slain long ago by a great force. This creature that had fallen from the stars died and was buried by rocks and rubble, which became the mountain range known as the Endless Rocken. But that's just the story, right? Anyway, all that to say that Thade Rex finds himself in a new realm. He is striding through a lush open plain, and he sees before him a forest where he hopes to perhaps do some hunting to feed himself. His stomach rumbles, and between you and me, his casket of whiskey that he has. Casket, is that the right word? A gourd. He has a gourd of whiskey on his side, but that's beginning to run dry. So he's getting a little concerned that he's going to be out of his fuel soon. Thade Rex puts a arrow and knocks it into his bow, and he begins tracking what he believes to be some form of creature that he can potentially eat. It's then that he hears a crack behind him, and he sort of freezes, readying his bow, no longer wishing to slay a creature to eat, but to fire a shot to defend himself from whatever is stalking him. Suddenly Thade Rex whirls about, his bow at full draw, and a familiar voice says, "Thade Rex, do you not recognize a friend when you see one?" Thade Rex lowers his bow. Standing before him is Valdane, the sorcerer, his old friend he's not seen for over a year. At his side is a strange-looking individual, a shorter, bold man with tattoos that sort of frame his eyes, and another one here as well in the shape of an eye. And he looks at Thade Rex in a very strange manner with cold, cold blue eyes. Thade Rex lowers his bow and says, "You were standing behind me. I couldn't see you. I thought you were about to attack me." And Valdane just sort of smiles and opens his arms, and they both laugh and embrace. It's been such a long time since they've seen each other. "Where's Droskor?" says Thade Rex, and Valdane's face falls. Droskor had been killed twice by the same Hydra. Now, because obviously Matt had DM'd that, he was asking that question in character. He knew full well what had happened to Droskor. But despite this, they discussed the fact that Droskor had fallen. And Thade Rex takes a little time to mourn and to take in the news. But Valdane says, "I'm afraid, Thade Rex, I'm going to have to leave you with these thoughts. I must press southeast now." "Why?" says Thade Rex. "I have been given some information, some pertinent information regarding the individual that I've been hunting for a very long time." "Oh," says Thade Rex. "I must travel this way because I must find the 8th gate. But I do not come empty-handed, or indeed alone. As you can see, this is my friend that I made in Lockthorn. This is Sayrak, and he is a warrior monk." Thade Rex is just still sort of like eyeing this monk every now and then. This monk who has not said a word at all. "Sayrak. What kind of name's that?" says Thade Rex. And Sayrak finally opens his mouth and he says, "It is one that I chose." Sayrak is Mike's character, if you remember from the other game, and he kind of I didn't really go into it too much because it was not pertinent to the particular story I was telling. But essentially, Valdane had helped Sayrak out. He had helped him escape the forces of another warrior monk known as Andreas, who is beginning to take over the land of Lockthorn over the sea. So anyway, essentially, Sayrak owed Valdane one and decided that he was going to accompany him back to Main Realm. However, because we need to get these two characters together, Mike's character and Thade Rex's character, it is agreed that Sayrak can, pay back this life debt or whatever, but he's not a Wookiee, but this debt essentially by accompanying Thade Rex on whatever errands he must perform. "I am sorry we're only reunited briefly," says Valdane, "but this is a matter of extreme importance and it is personal." Thade Rex gives a nod. "Well, I'm sure you'll be able to find me if you need me." And Valdane just gives a nod, looks to Sayrak and says, "Keep an eye on him." And with a smile, the sorcerer wanders off into the woodlands and disappears. "So," says Thade Rex, "what is it that you can do?" The monk just looks at Thade Rex serenely before calmly answering, "I have taken many vows, Ranger. Many vows that conduct my behaviour to certain patterns and certain ways of existence." Thade Rex sort of just shakes his head. "I'm guessing you can fight." "Oh, I can fight," says the monk. "I am well versed in many, many forms of martial arts and close combat." And Thade Rex is a little bit wary of this individual. The monk seems to stand perfectly still and perfectly content in doing so. He doesn't seem to waste any energy at all. Thade Rex's eyes narrow. Now, please remember, dear viewers, that the feud between Mike and Matt who plays Thade Rex, Mike who plays Sayrak now, still rages, for it annoyed Matt that this monk came along in the second half of his campaign, and I'm afraid to say it was pretty devastating. I mean, everyone knows who plays D&D that monks, are pretty formidable at the best of times, but Mike had managed to create this character that was really good at a lot of stuff. If there's one thing that Mike can do, it is optimize a character for Dungeons and Dragons, and Sayrak was no different, along with his flurry of blows, the devastating flurry of blows that the monk possesses. He also had the key strike, for example. And he'd combined that with some feats, I believe, that allowed him to have like a stunning palm attack, so he could stun enemies and then punch the hell out of them and then stun them again. Basically a stun lock, locking people in place if they couldn't make the fairly high save required to avoid such an attack. Seyrak was a machine. Seyrak would kill anything, basically. And Matt knew this going in, and he didn't like the idea of Seyrak competing with Thade Rex's kill count, which I'm afraid to say is the lowest of all the characters in these particular stories. But, you know, we love Thade Rex not because of his abilities, but because of his demeanour, I guess, and his attitudes. Suffice to say, there was tension already, and Thade Rex did not trust this monk. However, he turns to the monk and says, I head to the centre of this realm. I'm going to see what opportunities lay in wait. And the monk bows and says, as you wish, Ranger, I shall accompany you. Thade Rex does not like this guy. But journey they do, and they travel northwest to the centre of the realm. As they journey, Thade Rex looks over his shoulder to Seyrak and he says, tell me, monk, what do you know of this land? The monk sort of looks back at Thade Rex with those cold blue eyes and he says, I know very little, Ranger, for I have never walked on this land before. Well, says Thade Rex, and he begins to explain. Eldarium is essentially the capital of Main Realm, for it is the home of the Empire. Now, the Empire, I have not really explained this in any of the D&D stories, as a matter of fact, so I should probably explain how the Empire functions. The Empire essentially invaded Main Realm a long time ago from a faraway land, which we will discuss in future stories. But essentially, the Empire took over most of Main Realm, but rather than conquering it by the sword and with fire and death, a number of the realms were sort of parlayed into a sort of ruling structure whereby kings of, say, Orenthale or Ireland or Fereld, if they sworn fealty to the Empire and choose to cooperate and pay their dues, then essentially they can live as they have always lived. And most of the realms took that option. There are a few that didn't, but we'll get to that another day. But the Empire essentially has a presence in all of the provinces of Main Realm, particularly Eldarium, where the Empirical lies. And that is what they see. As they crest a mountain, they see before them the sweeping landscape of Eldarium. And at its very centre, there is a vast ravine, a vast pit, miles and miles and miles across, at the very centre of the land, that falls away into darkness. But hanging above it, with chains and bridges rising up to meet it, is a floating island upon which a colossal city sits. I had heard the stories, says Thade Rex, but seeing the Empirical, I now see that those stories did not give it credit. The monk just stares at the thing. I have never seen the like of it. Well, says Thade Rex, this is where I'm going for said opportunities. You keep saying opportunities, says the monk. What do you mean by this? I seek adventure, I seek fortune, I seek riches. Why do you seek these things, says the monk. Because this is what we do, says Thade Rex. We do, says Seyrak. Yes, this is what we do. I'm sorry, I know you're new to this part of the world, but generally speaking, if you want to get anywhere in this world, you've got to go looking for opportunities. I see, says the monk. Well, this is a strange culture, but I shall gladly embrace it. When in the Empirical, as they say. Thade Rex frowns. They don't say that. They will soon, says the monk, with a smile. Thade Rex just does not like this guy, and he says, well, okay, fine, let's just keep going. And then there is a yell, a cry of horror, and they spin around, and they see before them a terrifying sight. Dashing from a copse of trees comes a small man with slick brown hair and oily skin. Spots cover his youthful face. A face that is contorted with fear. He is screaming for his life. He has a huge backpack on his back, and he is running from a number of terrifying creatures that are giving chase and catching up with him rapidly. Thade Rex narrows his eyes and spots that these creatures are familiar to him. Creatures that he has seen before. They are hyena-like, they are wolf-like, yet they charge on their hind legs with vicious-looking cleavers and axes and maces in their almost canine-like hands. Very peculiar creatures known as Gnolls. The classic monster that is the Gnoll. And this individual is screaming for his life as he's being chased by these cackling fiends that are basically snapping at his heels. Literally. In a practice maneuver, Thade Rex already has an arrow ready to fire. But like that, Seirak is in the way of the Gnolls and their prey. As I'm sure many of you are aware, the monks have increased movement speed, and to Thade Rex is almost like a blink of an eye, and Seirak is amongst their numbers. Thade Rex watches as the monk wheels between knoll after knoll, with a flurry of blows here and a key strike there. This being moves fluidly, like water over rock, and it's stunning to see. It is unlike anything that anyone would really see in the main realm. There aren't really monks, particularly in this corner of the world. They just come from a different culture. And he is just beating the ever-loving hell, the 9 hells, out of these gnolls. Thade Rex makes a shot and kills one of them, and moves in, sort of flanking the attacking gnolls to fire more shots down from the high ground. But really, Seirak has this in the bag already. Like, one gnoll makes like a stab at the monk's throat, and he ducks under and just martial arts film sort of like backhanded chop against the gnoll. But then Thade Rex realizes something. It's almost like the monk is holding back somewhat, which is even more startling, as this display is really impressive. The monk is holding back, and as Thade Rex draws closer and closer, and the gnolls keep piling in, like they're desperately trying to attack this monk, but it's so difficult to hit the monk as well. As I'm sure you are all aware, the monk adds their wisdom modifier to their AC, so it's just stunning. It's like they're trying to fight Neo, basically. Like, he's just dodging out of the way of all the attacks and just beating the hell out of them. And then soon the dust sort of settles from this just display, and the monk is just standing there, sort of like in a pose, like as the last one that is standing behind him, and then just falls to the ground. Thade Rex moves to the scene of the battle, and he has killed a few of the gnolls, but all of the gnolls that were struck down by Seirak are still breathing. Thade Rex looks in horror at Seirak and says, "That might have been very impressive, but they all yet live." And he draws a knife, and Seirak reaches out a hand and says, "No, Thade Rex." "What?" says Thade Rex. "I am afraid to say that I have taken many vows, and one of them is that I shall not kill another living being." "What?" says Thade Rex. "I believe I was clear the first time. I will not kill another living being." "Really? What do you eat then?" "Well, I eat a number of it." No, says Thade Rex. Don't even start, actually. Don't even start. Oh, I cannot believe this. I cannot believe that Valdane has lumbered me with someone who refuses to kill. On what right? These gnolls were going to kill the... Sorry, what's your name? The man who was running from the Gnolls is out of breath and is sort of like... he kept running for a while, but he's slowly returning, out of breath, and he says, my name is Gavin. Gavin, I am a courier. I'm spreading the message of a newly opened guild within the Empirical, and I am seeking people like you. One moment, says Thade Rex to Gavin, and he goes back to Seyrak and he says, how can you expect to fight along my side? How can I trust you to fight by my side if you're not going to execute these fiends? I've made a vow, says Seyrak quite simply. They're Gnolls. They are vicious, evil creatures that would want nothing better than to tear your flesh away with their teeth. Why would you spare such a creature? It is not a case of sparing them, says Seyrak. It is more of understanding that I do not hold the right to take life from this world. Oh my gods, says Thade Rex. I hate to interrupt, says Gavin, but I bring a message. As I said, I am looking for people like you to join a guild within the Empirical. What, are you on commission or something, says Thade Rex. Actually, yes, says Gavin, but it's an honourable cause indeed. The Star Thief Guild is the newest in the city of the Empirical, and it is indeed a honourable guild to be a part of. It is a guiding, principled order. Yes, thank you for your consideration, says Thade Rex angrily, but we're dealing with something here. If you could just tell us, and Gavin just goes, I have a letter which will explain all. If you are interested in investigating such a worthy cause, then by all means, come to the address that is written here. Thank you ever so much for your assistance. I think I've found the people that will do well within the guild. Very well, says Thade Rex. Anything else? Oh, and please allow me to reward you. I have some potions here. He hands over some health potions, and I have a bit of gold. Thade Rex just snatches it, and the Gavin looks and says, but what of your friend? And Seyrak looks calmly at Gavin and says, do not worry, friend. I have taken a vow that you... What do you mean? Says Thade Rex. You mean you've taken a vow not to take gold as well? Well, yes, says Seyrak. I do not believe in owning any personal wealth whatsoever. Thade Rex looks down at Seyrak, at his... Or rather, or, you know, he's wearing sort of like... I guess like just standard monk attire, you know what I mean, but he's barefoot. So you don't kill anything and you don't use money. That is correct, says Seyrak. All the more for me then, says Thade Rex. Fine, and he pockets the gold. Perhaps this could be beneficial after all. I suppose, says Seyrak, that if we are going to be helping people, then I would like the idea of at least participating within the ranks of this guild. I should like to speak with their leader. What is their name? Gavin smiles and says, well, his name is Star Thief. The Star Thief Guild is named after a man, says Thade Rex. Oh yes, says Gavin, but he's quite an extraordinary man, and really that's more of a moniker. Star Thief is an idea. He merely bears the mantle. That's a bit peculiar, says Thade Rex. Well, we shall head to the Empirical. We thank you very much for your time and information, Gavin, and we wish you safe travels. Let us go, Seyrak, says Thade Rex, and he nods. Seyrak agrees and begins walking down the sweeping slope, heading towards the vast Empirical far, far in the distance. Sirach then hears a... The monk whirls about to see that Thade Rex is kneeling over the remaining Gnolls, slitting their throats. "Why did you listen, monk?" growls Thade Rex. "Had we left those Gnolls there, they would come around and they would pick up either our trail or Gavin's, and they will continue hunting us across these plains. Now, I don't know about you, but I would rather ensure that our backs are covered rather than waiting for sharp, gnashing teeth to be upon us once again." The monk just stares at Thade Rex, and there is a slight falter in that cold blue gaze. "Had they attacked us, I would have dealt with them again," says Sirach. "Why?" says Thade Rex. "They're evil. It doesn't matter. It is done. And while indeed you are serving Valdane by helping me, just remember that whilst travelling with me, we follow my rules, not yours." Sirach just stares at Thade Rex. "I shall continue to uphold my vow. It is, of course, your right to live the way that you wish. But do not judge me for the way I live my life." Thade Rex just scowls. "Come on. The city is still far away. We have much ground to cover." "I shall hang back," says Sirach. "What do you mean, hang back?" "I move rather rapidly. I'm afraid you might not be able to keep up." Thade Rex just scowls and just pulls his cloak and just stalks off down the hill. They travel for a good many days, for while it seems close, the Empirical is so large that it can be seen from miles and miles away. And after a significant journey, where little talk is had between the ranger and the monk, they arrive at what appears to be a fortified settlement at the foot of one of these colossal chain bridges that arc up into the sky towards this floating wonder of a city. At the entrance to this fortified town, there is a large queue, for it seems that travellers, tradesmen, sellswords of all different walks of life are waiting to enter the fabled capital of Main Realm. All around the edges of this vast ravine pit that lies beneath the Empirical, all around it there is farmland as far as the eye can see. Obviously, it would take a tremendous amount of agriculture to feed such a giant city. And also, because of that, there means there are a lot of settlements surrounding the area. And on their journey, they are able to visit a few of these places and have a warm bed for the night, stock up on supply and stuff, and hear stories about the city itself. Some say that the city rose up from the ground. The shard of rock that the city sits upon actually came out of the ravine. Others say that way back, ages past, when the Empire first invaded, that they brought the city with them and it floated across the sea as some kind of massive mobile fortress, firing down siege weaponry and artillery down upon any that opposed them. The story's been mixed up as to whether which was true or not, but what does remain true is such a splendorous sight that it is almost difficult to behold. The foot of the chain bridges that rise up toward the city can easily be detached in the event of a siege, so that no army could reach the Empirical if needs be. And at the foot of these bridges there are Imperial Guard. They wear well-made armor and breastplates, and they have short swords and spears and shields and the like. And they are they are waiting. They are the ones waiting for our adventurers when they arrive at the foot of this bridge. And after some hesitation as to whether they should be let up or not. Eventually, Thade Rex, with a little bit of gold, convinces one of the Imperial Guard to let them up. And they go. They climb this bridge that reaches up into the sky. I believe I was actually inspired by Sonic the Hedgehog for this particular sort of imagery. I'd like you to imagine a cross between the floating island from Sonic and Knuckles, if you ever played it, and there is a sort of big floating egg thing from Sonic's CD that is held against the planet of Mobius with these giant chains. So kind of like a mix between those two. That's my influence, is Sonic the Hedgehog. No, kind of. Just to give you a better idea as to what this looks like, because it is quite a strange image. But yeah, they're rising up these chain bridges, and they're seeing as far as the eye can see this sweeping land. They can see all of Main Realm from up here. They can see the endless Rocken behind them, and they can see far into the east darker lands that are yet to be explored. But for now, they are climbing higher and higher and higher, and then they see the wondrous architecture of the city itself. The Empirical is a building of like an entire city created by the Empire, and as such, the architecture is very different from what you usually see in Main Realm. It is more later medieval inspired, like it is a absolute fortress by the very definition of the word. The walls are thick, and they can see that there are indeed a number of siege equipment and artillery ready to rain down hell on anything that would try and approach it in a harmful fashion. Upon arrival into this vast floating city, Thade Rex and Sayrak make note that the Empire rules here with an iron fist. Everything seems a little bit oppressive. Everyone in the streets seems to keep their head down. Once within the walls of this place, it seems like an average city, obviously a colossal city, the biggest city there's ever been, but it still seems like a city, and you don't really feel like you're in a floating city when you're inside it. And they walk through the streets, and like any other city they've been in, there are markets, there are merchant vendors, stores, and all sorts of places where one could spend their hard-earned money. There are taverns, and it just, yeah, it seems like a wondrous place to be, albeit a little bit, like I say, oppressive. Guards seem to be patrolling regularly, and Thade Rex and Sayrak keep their head down as they make their way through the city to the address that is written upon the scroll that was given to them by Gavin. They find themselves wandering into an alleyway, and I ask Thade Rex and Sayrak to do a spot check. 4 hooded individuals bearing long, sharp knives erupt from the shadows, and I ask them to roll initiative. Assassins of some kind have struck, and Thade Rex and Sayrak find themselves fighting for their lives. Thade Rex goes to pull a shot into his bow, but they are already too close, and he finds himself hurling his bow aside and drawing his long sword in a desperate attempt to parry the attempts that the assassins make on his life. Sayrak is able to do a spinning double kick into the chest of one of them, and bouncing off him collides into the other assailant attacking him. It is a frenzied battle. It is something that we're still getting used to, the fact that this monk has such mobility in comparison to the other characters that we've played so far. And it is pretty impressive when Mike, as playing Sayrak, is describing how, using his sureness of mind and his emptiness of body, he's able to block blades with his hands as if his blades were weapons. They described the monk's fist as essentially being lawful weapons at a certain point, magical weapons as well. So we kind of like the idea that he's able to block weapons with his arms and his hands. And he's ducking around all these attacks, assassins leaping into the air and throwing knives after Thade Rex, who's able to deflect one with his sword, and he's able to plunge his blade into one of these assassins, killing them. Sayrak obviously trying to take his time, because although Mike has decided that Sayrak has taken his vow of not killing people, it does mean that he has to take a few. He has to. I can't remember how he did it now. I think it was he had to take a number off his rolls or something to ensure that he was precisely hitting them to knock them out rather than kill them. Because monks can easily kill people with their hands, as I'm sure most of you already know. While there are only 3 assassins remaining, it would seem that the 2 pressing on Sayrak are giving him a lot of grief. And for the first time, the monk's blood is drawn as one of the assassin's blades basically scrapes up the monk's unarmoured chest. Sayrak, staggering back, looks with a cold fury at this assassin before re-engaging him, doing a bicycle kick towards the assassin, who is able to roll out of the way as his partner leaps from a barrel in the alleyway and then plunges a blade hard into the monk's side. The monk's lungs just empty as the wind is knocked from him. Thade Rex is struggling with the one assassin that is still on him. They are locking blades, parrying blow for blow as they sort of fight back and forth down this alleyway. Sayrak is in real trouble. He goes for a duck and then goes to try and make a key strike, but the assassin is no longer there, stepping aside and driving another attack towards the monk. But there is a clang of steel as the assassin's blade is parried, not by the monk's abilities, but by someone else's. A figure stands in the alleyway who they had not seen before. He is also hooded and cloaked. Beneath the cloak they see the glimmer of silver armour, and they see fierce green eyes beneath thick black eyebrows glaring from beneath the hood. And with a swing of his blade, the assassin falls dead in one strike. The other assassin assaulting Sayrak turns and hurls a dagger at this stranger, who lifts a hand and just easily just bats it aside. Telekinetically, it would seem. It doesn't even hit him, just whoa. And the assassin's eyes widen in fear as this individual just raises a hand and hits him with a blast of what appears to be divine light. A searing blast of divine light. It just hits this assassin directly in the chest, and screaming, he collapses to the ground, motionless. Sayrak is on his knees, like panting, blood pouring from him, looking up at this individual that's just saved him. And Thade Rex is still fighting his one assassin. At this point, they've started like climbing up the side of the building in sort of like an attempt to outsmart the other. The assassin makes a false move, and Thade Rex is able to deliver a devastating uppercut to his assailant's chin, and he just falls back off the side of the alleyway and onto the ground, dead. The 2 reconvene, and this stranger is wiping blood from his blade onto one of these dead assassins. And Thade Rex, panting, exhausted, actually helps Sayrak to his feet. He's actually seen that he's injured, and he's like, alright, fair enough. He helps him up, and he looks to this individual and says, "Who are you?" And the man pulls his hood down to reveal long, fair, almost white hair, and piercing green eyes, and a calm smile. And he says, "Welcome to the Empirical, friends. I've been waiting for you. My name is Star Thief." Little did Thade Rex and Sayrak know, and little did Matt and Mike, the players, know, that they had just met someone who would be responsible for changing the setting of Main Realm forever, for good, permanently. This is an individual that is critical within the development of the world that we had all created together. And as a DM, I knew in my heart that a critical decision was awaiting Thade Rex and Sayrak. And depending on what they choose, you will see, dear viewers, it will change the course of these stories forever. And that is where we're going to leave this edition of D&D Stories. Thank you for watching, and keep gaming.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the D&D Stories Facebook, Patreon, and t-shirts on Redbubble. Keep gaming!